We can't hear you. Your mic's off.
No worries, man. Happy Monday, February 2nd, everybody. And welcome to the Work and Talk podcast. And this is the Builders Show. And I'm with your host, Cameron Vogelsang. Bro, we are already 1 month in to 2026. Can you already believe that?
Yep. We are starting February, and the past week has been a roller coaster with the weather. And I think a lot of people are getting back to normal this week.
There we go. So that snowstorm really, I feel like, yeah, it shook a lot of people up, especially that cold front. It was all across the U.S. But like you said, people are getting back to things. If you were on a construction site, you probably got to stay home. There was probably a few snow days. But now, if you are listening and if you're driving into work and you're not union, you're probably a scab. You're probably a rat. As electricians, we probably hear that far too often. Or you have that internal question: should I go union? Should I not go union? And at the same time, you see in the comments, you see when you post your work, there's always those one or two guys who always say, hey, you union or are you non union? And if you say you're not, then you're a scab. You're automatically a bad person. Have you seen that throughout Instagram, or have you caught wind of that down in Tennessee, or is it pretty open shop?
Well, I'm in an area that is not heavily unionized. I wouldn't consider Tennessee heavily unionized compared to other states, but I have seen that on social media. I've seen it every once in a while in the comments on my posts. I never really understood what that meant, being
Hmm.
called a union rat. And I would just scroll past and forget about it. But it's a thing. It's a term that's used to talk down to non-union workers. So what we want to discuss is what is this all about? What is a union rat? What does it mean for electricians? Will, what is a union
so,
rat?
so me personally, I grew up in New York City, so it was a heavy union state, especially the city. And I actually worked in the union. Not a lot of people know that. I actually worked for the city. But when I'd say I worked for the city, when I worked for the union, it was more on the municipal city side. So there's union companies that are focused on construction and, production. Then there's the government union side, where it's more of we're essential, we're not here to produce anymore, we're just here to maintain. So that's the side that I came from. But when it comes to the union as a whole, the union was founded in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and it's three main reasons the union was established: the 8-hour workday, fair wages, and then safe work conditions. That is the reason why the union had such a strong, motivating, and appealing effect on people. Because you had those sweatshops cooking, the industrial revolution where you had 8-year olds working in factories or
Sure.
in the caves getting the black. And I don't think that's an argument, that unions were needed at a time where people were taking advantage of, and maybe they didn't put too much effort or too much importance on someone else. Like, oh, so you lost a finger today. See you tomorrow you know so for everything and everyone who's listening, we want to establish a good timeline. So we're talking from the 1800s till today. There was a period where the union was needed. There was a time where union workforce was, if you were union, you were taken care of. If you were union, oh man, people fought people to get in line. People woke up early to get the first application to become a union tradesman. But what we want to talk about today is some of the terms, some of the conversations that we're seeing, especially when it comes to online, where in the beginning, when union began, there were some terminologies that they used to protect union pride and union workshops or union construction sites or union gatherings. So if there was an industrial plant that wasn't paying their guys a normal wage for the task they were doing, they would put up a big inflatable rat, Scabby the rat, and it would use to tell everybody, like a fear tactic or a pressure tactic, that hey, this contractor or this developer or this builder isn't doing what they're supposed to be doing. Their guys deserve better. Or vice versa, when there was a protest or if there was a strike going on, and if you yourself was a worker and if you didn't support the strike and you walked into work anyway, like you crossed the picket lines and all that stuff, they called you a scab. Because as long as that contractor, developer, or builder was making money, he was quote unquote going to keep exploiting you. So that's where these two ideas of scab and rat came from. It was basically a pressure, it was basically a tactic the unions would use or terminology they would use to identify somebody with that bad intent of purposely paying non-livable wages, purposely exploiting their workers. And as a worker, you're dealing with this pressure of I need to provide for my family, so I don't want to strike and potentially lose money, but at the same time you're hurting the union because they're striking together, and then you cross the picket line knowingly and you say I'd rather take the pennies rather than the dollar. So then you cut the line and you go to work anyway. So that's where scab, that's where rat came from. Well, I feel like we're coming to a part or a point in 2026, especially now, where we have to start asking, are you a union scab? What does that mean? Especially when it comes to 2026. I feel like personally, that term doesn't hold weight anymore. I'm sorry, it just doesn't. If you call me a scab, I don't care. Why? Because at the end of the day, I know as an electrical contractor, I'm not going to screw my guys. I know at the end of the day, I'm not knowingly or willingly trying to sacrifice the safety of my team. And I feel like that's the conversation that we're going to have today. It's intent versus perception. All right. And I want to get your feedback from that because I know you're new to this union terminology. I know you're new to this scab versus rat debate. But at the end of the day, when we talk about intent, when we talk about character, when we talk about principle, you have a strong sense in that. So, with all of that in mind, how do you feel? What's going through your mind right now?
Yeah. So thanks for the explanation of what a union rat is, what a union scab is, the history and the intent. And I think that's key when we hear these terms because what is happening is today, if you hear someone call someone else a union scab or a union rat, well, you're already presupposing their intent. You're already assuming what they're trying to do. And that's already a bad starting point, is by name calling and assuming that if you're not union, that you have bad intentions. And with that, also, you are seeing the term union rat. That's that is equivalent to bad intent. That is the same thing as going out trying to screw your guys, like you said. So I think what this has developed into is, in my opinion, the union started off as a thing with good intent, an organization with good intentions, and it was a real problem that needed to be solved back when this started. And I think with just like with a lot of other things, as time has gone on, as things have developed, now we're at a point to where if you're not union, you're a bad guy. If you're not union, you're an idiot. If you're not union, you're doing things wrong. And unfortunately, we have now a battle amongst tradesmen, and let's just talk about electricians specifically, to where we're always fighting union versus non-union. And what I think a missing part of this is a conversation that addresses these things, because what you have is a union is always talking about how great the union is. high wages, benefits, you name it. We hear that all the time on videos, on social media, how good the union is, but we never hear maybe how good a non-union shop is, or maybe the things that aren't so great about the union, because the union's not perfect. Non-union has some faults too, right? But we need to come together and have these real discussions and stop the name calling, because it's just really dumb. And again, you're presupposing someone's intent. That is a judgment on someone's character, which is a big deal. If you call someone a union rat, you are immediately judging their character like they have ill intentions. And so I think I've seen that in the comments before. Getting back to Will, you're asking my thoughts and perspective. I've seen that term tossed around a little bit, and I never really thought about it too much until recently. And I'm just like, dude, why? You don't even know me. You don't even know who I am. The unions aren't even heavy around here. I'm not competing with unions on anything. I can promise you that. And so, last thing, I'll shoot it back to you, Will. As far as taking care of your guys as a non-union shop, why why is that not a, the union acts like that's not possible as a non-union shop? Like, I can't take care of my guys. Trust me, my guy can leave if he doesn't like something, and we're gonna have a conversation if he doesn't like something before anyone just gets up and leaves. And so, what are your thoughts on that, Will?
I think you hit it on the head because everyone, like you said, we're now at this frame. Now at this time where it's union versus non-union. It's black versus white. And we're coming to the point where if you get to a conversation and, not trying to get political, not trying to get conspiratorial, but it's if you say you support this, oh man, you're going to get the other people on the other side of the fence going at it. And with that in mind, I like how you said it's going to identify or it points at a lack of character when that's not really the case. Once again, I know good union contractors. I know bad union contractors. I know good electricians in non union shops and bad electricians in non union shops. What I want to see is a conversation genuinely taking place because we are coming into a position where it's just, hey, we're union and we take care of our guys when it comes to safety. Hey, we take care of our guys when it comes to working hours, as well as wages. What I want to really hone in on when it comes to the union, there was a time where they were needed. Remember, 8-year-olds were working in factories. We had individuals losing toes, fingers in a normal Monday, and then we'll be like, "Oh, see you Tuesday." And then there was people getting pennies on the dollar. So what did we start to see? We see and saw the need of an established organization to fight for these people. And that's where the union came in, and they did an amazing job. But as time started to progress, as time started to fast forward, we're now living in not only a government, but we're living in a world where there are organizations to take care of that. For example, we have like OSHA now. So to say I have a safe work environment is not only a union shop. There's OSHA and there's different regulations to help you with that now. Even if you were union or non-union, you have that availability. Now, when it comes to wages, the Department of Labor sets standards for what's an appropriate apprenticeship wage. So you can follow along union versus non union. When it comes to licensing requirements, it's not just go through a union apprenticeship. There's also non union training, non union schools where you can get your license as well. And guess what? The Department of Labor, Department of Education, depending on what state you are at, has those requirements listed on their website. It doesn't only say, hey, go through a union approved apprenticeship program. No, it gives you multiple options. Just like safety, there's multiple options. Just like wages, there's multiple options. All of these things are a guideline, a baseline for what you, union or non union, have to follow. And then if you decide to go above and beyond, there's multiple contractors out there who are doing as much as union in a non-union capacity. And that's a beautiful thing to see. So this debate of union versus non-union, I think we have to start having more conversations like these, because right now you're just making it look like it's a fanboy club or a fangirl club, or hey, if you're not part of us, you're against us and you're hurting us. When at the end of the day, everyone's trying to make a living. And at the end of the day, everyone's just trying to go up to work, leave with the same fingers that they came in with. At the end of the day, we also know that there's the rotten apples. There's bad contractors on both sides. Don't get me started. People talk about, hey, there's some mafia contractors in the union and there's some dirt bags out there non-union. You understand? And we all know those types of people. We all been around where we see the type of mentality that some of these guys have. And guess what? That's okay, because there's now an established guideline that we all can follow. And I want everybody who's thinking about, should I jump into a union shop or a non-union shop? You really have to ask yourself, what's the best fit for you? There's no right or wrong answer. You understand? There's a pathway for anybody when it comes to licensure, when it comes to safety, when it comes to the styles of work, pay. You can find anything that you want. And that's the beautiful part of what the trade has to offer. Now we come into the personal side of things. So, Cameron, I don't know if that I answered your question. That's on the business side of things, and the roadmaps that we have. On the personal side of things, what you were bringing up, the character or someone's intent or knowingly trying to screw someone, you want to take us a dive in your thought process on that?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. What I've seen personally with me in my engagement with other electricians on social media for the past 4 years is that the union has attempted to take the moral authority of how everything should be operated.
There you go.
So that goes with pay, how much an individual should be paid, but especially with education and licensing requirements. I can't tell you how many comments and DMs I have gotten from people who I suspect are union or used to be union, telling me that I have no business being an electrician, and much more so being a business owner as an electrical contractor. Why? Because I've been doing this for 5 years now, but at the time, you've only been doing this for 3 years, Cameron. 4 years in my state, you have to have so many hours. You have to have 8 years of experience. Your state is the wild, wild west. So I'd like to ask you, person from New York, I think you guys are too strict. You see how there's no real clear-cut answer. It's just your opinion versus someone else's. It's one state standard versus another state standard. And that's why I bring it back to the union, because I think the union, after all these decades, they've established or have attempted to establish the moral authority to speak on these things. And if you don't align with what they preach, basically, then you're out. Right? Oh, I think I
That's
froze.
no worries.
What the heck
But
happened there? I had like
I
fireworks
don't
going
know.
off. Oh
Yeah,
my
but if you're
goodness, that was
looking on the
crazy.
video, Cameron is either, spitting some too much sauce, because all this fireworks just started shooting up around him. That was hilarious. But
Yeah,
to counter, to be the devil's advocate, unions started it. They started these regulations. They started so they can say they have the moral authority because they started this movement. What would you say coming into 2026 now? Has that moral authority shifted now? Or, because we already know, just like what I mentioned, there's all these agencies and organizations that help out in these manners. So it's not the only voice anymore speaking on it. I didn't mean to cut you off, but you want to add to that?
yeah. Repeat the question.
So you were talking about how individuals right now are seeing the union speak as if they have moral
Right.
authority. My
Correct.
argument is, well, they started it.
That's hey. I always am going to defer back to what the state requires, whatever state you live in. So if you live in a state that requires all that, then that's what you need to abide by. I'm not necessarily against that. I'm
Yeah.
not against whatever state does what. I live in a state that has laws, regulations, rules, and that's what's allowed in my state, and that's the parameters that I abide in. I'm not gonna go out and call these other states like they're doing it the wrong way, but I'm just telling you that's people are telling me that I have no business doing what I'm doing, yet I live in a state that allows it. You can't argue that. You may not like it because your state does otherwise, but I am operating within the parameters of what's allowed in my state. So that's fine if the union wants to try and take the moral authority because they started it and they've done this and that over. They've done way more than I have, right? I'm just a 34-year-old dude who's been in the trades for 5 years, but I'm always going to defer back to the state every time. Will.
I agree. And I feel like, once again, people coming into the trades, that's why we have these organizations out there for you to do your own research in. This type of conversation, these types of debates you're going to have when you don't do that type of research. You understand? This is when you're going to ask somebody on a job site what they think. This is when you go down the Instagram rabbit hole, when you start texting people on the side saying, hey, should I go union or non-union? That's the wrong type of people. You have to do the research or look for some type of mentor. Look at somebody that you want to imitate and then start asking them the questions so that they can now find these types of answers and tell you or show you what the trade truly has to offer. And I think, once again, the entire purpose of this conversation is to understand that we need to have more dialogue when it comes to union versus non-union. We have to have more dialogue in the sense where I haven't met an electrician who's genuinely waking up and saying, I'm trying to undercut my guy so I can make more money. Now, was that the case 100 years ago? I don't know. I can't verify that. But it's kind of hard to see or believe that that was a type of mentality someone had. Now, is it possible? Absolutely. And if it is, shame on them. You understand? I'm somebody who I want my team to have. I'm the type of electrical contractor that I want my team to do better than me. I genuinely want them to be able to come to work, feel satisfied, get good pay, have room for growth, share those ideas. And the reason why I became a contractor, firstly, was because I truly wanted to help my own contractor that I was working for, and he didn't listen to me. So I decided, screw this, I'm going to just do it on my own. But I want to create that type of environment for my guys or my employees because I want them to feel like they have a voice, that they're protected, that they have somebody looking after them, or I wouldn't put them in a situation that I myself wouldn't go into. So I feel like this is a type of conversation that needs to be had in 2026. Because when you look up the chain, when you look up at these big organizations, no one's talking up there. It's big business talking. You understand? And everyone's just looking for members right now. But right now, if you are an apprentice, if you're coming into the trades, if you want to become an electrician, you start asking yourself, should I go union or non-union? Everything you see is just a battlefield right now. Anybody can tell you to go union. Anybody can tell you to not go union. Then you're going to see the argument go back and forth. And then you're left in the middle deciding, what the heck do I do? And that's not going to help the industry grow. If we keep pushing these titles instead of lessons, we're always going to be stuck as electricians, as apprentices. And guess what? The few people who do the research on their own, they're the only ones who are going to grow. We want to give everybody the opportunity to grow in this trade. Or if you're coming in as an apprentice, we want to give you all the information that you need to know to make the right decision for yourself. But guess what? That's going to come through doing your own research or finding the right people in your life, your foremen, your journeyman that you're following. And guess what? They're going to show you, hey, go to the DOL website, find out the licensing requirements, and you're going to be shocked. They don't tell you to go to a union school. They don't tell you to go to non-union school. They're going to say, this is the type of education hours that you need. Submit it. These are the working hours you need by a licensed electrician. Sign it, submit it. And guess what? Now you're on the path to not only building the type of life that you want, but at the same time, you get to now establish yourself and bring in a whole new generation after you. So that's what I think. It's when we start going down this path of just name calling, scab, non-union, like people genuinely think that's going to hurt us. Like, okay, I know who I am. I know what I'm doing with my guys. I know I wouldn't put them in a situation that I wouldn't like. So these are types of things that just don't work anymore. I got to look it up. I don't even know if they're allowed to do inflatable rats anymore in New York City. I know 6 years ago they were talking about banning them, but I want to figure that out more. But going back to character and intent, what do you think, Cameron? What are your goals when it comes to being a good electrical contractor?
Number one goal is I don't lay people off.
That's your goal, not to lay
Have
people off.
yeah, have you ever laid anyone off, Will?
Don't ask me.
Maybe early.
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah.
hey, just remember that the union always isn't as secure as they say they are, because I can point to several electricians who have DM'd me saying they got laid off for months. Months. Okay.
Yeah.
Not that doesn't mean a non-union guy can't lay someone off, but all I'm saying is that the union, they kind of tell you all the good parts and they don't tell you all the other stuff that people deal with. So kind of threw some jabs there. But uh what I a goal or goals that I have as an electrical contractor, number one is to be a good leader, and that is in the context of having employees. Number two, taking care of my employees, no matter how many I have. I want to make sure that they're taken care of, that they're not having to worry about what's coming next, that they can feed their families, they can save, they don't have any pressures that are because of me as a contractor. So I would say now maybe my goals or my focuses were different a year ago before I had somebody, but now that's the on the forefront of my mind. Number one is is making sure my guys are taken care of, but actually a prerequisite of that is making sure that I have work. And how do you make sure you have work? Is maintaining relationships with your GCs and your customers, making sure those stay healthy and fresh, and that you're communicating well. So I kind of backtracked. So number one, I think is as a contractor for me is focusing on maintaining good relationships with existing customers, and number two is taking care of my guys. So just because I'm
I love.
non-union doesn't mean I'm like trying to screw with people. That's the thing. When you start throwing around these terms out there, they act like that's like on the forefront of my mind is to screw my guys over or to cheat them out of something. And that's the problem with the terms and the labels. It's already a problem calling people names, number one. Number two, with the terms and the labels, you're presupposing their intent and their character. That's the problem.
Not only that, I personally feel like, did you know, as an electrician, 80 to 90% of the workforce is non union? Did you know only about 10% of the workforce is unionized? So, what is that telling us? There's a small minority dictating the reputation of the entire electrical trade. That's something that has to change. And that's why we need to have more conversations like this. And I welcome anybody. If you're a union electrician, if you're a union rep, if you're a union business development manager, I would love to invite you to the show so we can have this conversation. Because we started off with saying union was needed at a time where there was unsafe work conditions, there was unfair wages, and at the same time, everyone was working from sun up to sundown. There was no standard of an 8-hour workday. So there was a time union was heavily needed. But we're coming into a world now where I feel like we need more of a conversation, because the majority of us, the majority of people who you talk to on the day to day are non union. So we need to establish an idea. We need to establish a conversation where we get to see the pros and cons. And we have to understand union's not the choice for everybody. We also have to understand that union may take you away from some of the goals that you may have. For example, you may be looking to hit a certain amount of hours to get your license. Like you mentioned, in Tennessee, it's completely different from it is over here in Connecticut or New York, some of these other states. But if you have a specific goal, you have to figure out which path is going to work for you. And because the union was needed in the beginning, and because the union established all these standards, we now have some agencies and organizations. Like now we have OSHA, now we have Department of Labors. We have all these different organizations that's going to help you reach your goal if you're union or if you're non-union. So once again, if you are coming into the workforce and if you're asking, should I be union or should I go non-union? Just understand that 80 to 90% are non-union. Roughly about 10 to 20% are union. And you have to figure out what route is going to fit your needs.
That's
So,
good. I've gotten oh sorry, we'll cut it off here in a second, but I was just going to add I've gotten messages over the past couple of years asking that very question. Should I go union or non-union? And I always ask them what they're trying to do. What are their goals? If if they say anything about trying to open up shop, I'm like, dude, you need to find non-union, because if you go test, if they go find out you're testing and you get your contractor's license, you're gone, dude. At least that's how it is in some states with some unions. I don't know if that's kind of a universal standard, but if they catch wind of you trying to do something like that, you're out of there.
Yeah. And that's the point of today's conversation. And I know we're going to jump back into this about unions on Wednesdays and Fridays morning show. But today, the intent is we want to stop teaching people to label union versus non union, to have this divide. We need to start teaching people what the trade has to offer, because if we keep with this back and forth, that's at the end of the day going to hurt the trade and is going to keep progress from happening. So we need to start protecting these standards, these organizations, these requirements that are now in play, instead of just trying to take sides. So with that in mind, I'm excited for Wednesday's conversation, bro. I can't wait to see a lot of the comments that you guys are going to leave down below. So feel free, if you're union, non-union, comment down below. Why did you join either or why did you leave either or? I want to hear from you guys. So feel free to comment down below. Let us know your thoughts. And at the same time, if you have a nice point or a question that you want answered at Wednesday's morning show, feel free to drop it down below. But thank you, everybody. Welcome to the Builders Show. Have a good day, everybody. Bye.